Okay, so
Subprimal.
the way that I just don't believe what he's saying at all. For the love of God, please wear sunscreen.
Subprimal.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Maya and I am once again joined by my lovely gorilla companion Harambe. And today I felt personally attacked by someone, so I feel like I needed to make a reaction video to the one and only Liver King. Now I've been seeing TikToks of Liver King everywhere, all over my feed, and while yes, a lot of what he's saying is misinformation, I've been hesitant to kind of make a video about it because I just didn't want to get involved. But I have to admit, I'm an H3 podcast stan and I love consuming hours of the H3 podcast. So when I saw that Ethan and Hassan brought Liver King onto their podcast, I realized I needed to say something. And yes, I have a whole outline. I took notes. I watched the entire podcast twice because, listen, if I'm going to dissect all the misinformation that Liver King is spewing out of his mouth, I'm gonna do it the Maya fashion, which is incredibly detail-oriented and planned out because that's just my jam. Now, I'm glad that Ethan and Hassan were actually able to push back on a lot of Liver King's more controversial points, but they also started saying some things that were incorrect throughout the podcast as well. And so I felt like it was my duty as an anthropologist to step in and provide information where it seemed like Liver King, Ethan, and Hassan didn't know a lot about certain aspects of our evolution or certain aspects about hunter-gatherer tribes. And I don't fault Ethan and Hassan for not saying the correct things because they're not proclaiming to be experts and they're not trying to sell their BS supplement pills to anyone. That, by the way, supplement pills which have not been approved or validated by the FDA. So I don't blame them and I appreciate that they were able to push back, but I definitely think I can provide more context on a lot of the anthropological claims that Liver King is making, that he uses to justify his way of life and he uses to sell his, whatever you can call it, liver supplement pills. Now, I just want to say that I'm going to be reacting to Liver King's statements as an anthropologist, not as a medical doctor, not as a psychologist, and not as a nutritionist or dietitian. I can only really speak for the statements that Liver King makes about our evolution, our behavior, the presence of certain hunter-gatherer tribes that he's supposedly lived with. But I want to clarify that I'm responding mostly to his statements regarding our evolution. I also want to say that I did get my undergraduate degree with honors in human evolutionary biology and anthropology. So I've spent the past more than 4 years studying human evolution, human behavior, human psychology, human genetics, all things human basically, which if you look at all the videos on my channel, that is kind of my jam. I'm also currently getting my PhD in anthropology, so I'm furthering my education and I'm learning new things about our evolution and behavior every single day. So I'd like to say that I know a fair bit about human evolution. But obviously that doesn't mean that you should trust everything I say. Like how everyone was doing with Liver King, you should definitely question and criticize where you're getting your information from. So throughout this video and in the description below, I will be linking all of my sources to anything I've said. So if you want to check out where I'm getting my information from, feel free, go ahead, read it and make your own decisions and come to your own conclusions about what I'm telling you and what Liver King is saying. That being said, we have a lot of clips to respond to, so let's just dive right into it.
Is GMO primal or subprimal?
At this point, this is what I'm thinking. When you start to get into like gene editing, that kind of stuff, genetic modifications, right now, I would say that's completely subprimal.
Okay, so Liver King likes to have this like dichotomy of things that are subprimal or primal, meaning things that are subprimal, I guess, are like not natural to us and not like what our ancestors would do, and primal is things that our ancestors have been doing or something that is inherent or innate to our nature. Liver King starts off this podcast by saying that GMOs are subprimal. Now, you can have whatever take or stance or opinion you have on GMOs. I do want to say that there's no conclusive evidence that GMOs are actually harmful in any way, shape, or form. They're actually really healthy and nutritious, just as healthy and nutritious as non-genetically modified food, and it's perfectly safe for you to consume and eat them. There might be a subtle taste difference, like what Hassan was talking about the taste of GMO versus non-GMO food, but the fact of the matter is there is no conclusive evidence that GMOs are harmful to humans. So now that we've established that most of the research says that GMOs are perfectly fine to eat, let's talk about if GMOs are truly subprimal or primal or whatever Liver King wants to call it. The fact of the matter is we've been genetically modifying organisms since the advent of agriculture. This is literally how we have produced our crops. We have been crossbreeding different species of maize, of wheat, of different types of cereal grains for thousands of years to produce the most optimal crops for us to consume. So by definition, it's innate or in our nature because it's something that we've been doing for thousands of years. No one says anything about a farmer crossbreeding different crops on his plantation. So why are we concerned now that it's going on in a lab? If anything, it's more cost effective, it saves more time, and it's more efficient in general.
80% of people are struggling paycheck to pay. 70% are overweight, half are obese, 50% are on prescription meds, 40% have or will get cancer, 20% experience infertility. Now, you can't look around this room and tell me either you yourself, someone in your family, or people around this room are suffering with these things.
Yeah.
You think that's a better life?
All right, so Liver King also points out that he believes that hunter-gatherer tribes are living a better life than people living in well-off Western countries. You can have whatever opinions you want on this, but in my opinion, objectively, that is just false. I'm not sure about the statistics of obesity or mental health that he's talking about, but let me bring to light some statistics about hunter-gatherer tribes. The average life expectancy of someone from the Aceh tribe is 37. The average life expectancy of someone from the Yanomamo tribe in Brazil is 40, and the average life expectancy of someone from the Maasai tribe is 45. These hunter-gatherer tribes have no assurance of when the next meal is going to be. They're constantly hungry and they're looking for food. There's no gender equality to speak of. Most hunter-gatherer tribes spend more than 8 hours a day doing highly strenuous activities that require a lot of labor and a lot of work to do. And studies have shown that life expectancy from hunter-gatherer tribes is actually half of the life expectancy of humans from industrialized nations. Throughout the years, we've gradually increased our life expectancy. In fact, historic trends from Sweden show that in the 1750s, the average life expectancy was 40, and this has now increased to 80 by the year 2000. This now present gap in life expectancy between industrialized nations and humans from hunter-gatherer tribes is actually greater than the gap in life expectancy between non-industrialized hunter-gatherer tribes and non-human primates. And I don't know, personally for me, I kind of like the idea of living in a much more egalitarian society where I'm allowed to become educated and work in a variety of fields, and I don't have to work more than 8 hours a day strenuously doing very arduous tasks, and I have no idea where my next meal is coming from. I also know that I'm gonna die a lot earlier than people in industrialized nations. Like I said, you can have any opinion you want, but I just think it's kind of funny and privileged that Liver King, a man who has seemingly come into a lot of wealth for questionable reasons, which we will get into later, who seems to enjoy a very comfortable life in his huge mansion with his many cars and private jets and hotels, talking about how much better and easier it would be to live in a hunter-gatherer tribe because he's lived with them. Ah yes, because you're the kind of person that I want to go to when talking about hunter-gatherer tribes, instead of people who actually live in those tribes.
In cancer, in depression, and anxiety. You look at these modern-day primitive culture tribes, it's non-existent. These things are non-existent.
When it comes to actual studies on mental health and mental illness on hunter-gatherer tribes, there are very few studies that actually look at this, and they all have very conflicting results. So there really is no conclusive evidence on the general mental well-being of these hunter-gatherer tribes. What I actually did find is that in a study that looked at women from the Hadza tribe that Liver King mentions a lot throughout this podcast, now this study looked at Hadza women who had just given birth. And the study actually found that more than half of them were suffering from postpartum depression. However, another study done on mental well-being within the same Hadza tribe found that the Hadza scored 6 points higher on the subjective happiness scale than scores from 12 other industrialized countries. They also found that as the age of the participants increased, their score on the subjective happiness scale decreased, and this happened with most other industrialized nations, but it actually did not happen with the Hadza. So in the very scarce amount of studies that I was able to find, one showed that Hadza women suffered from postpartum depression, and another study showed that Hadza individuals were relatively happier than industrialized nations. All in all, the evidence is pretty inconclusive. Honestly, I think this relates to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The first two needs on Maslow's hierarchy of needs is physiological needs and safety needs. And for the Hadza, not knowing when your next food or water source is coming, or not necessarily knowing if you're safe from different tribes or different animals, means that you don't have time to actually think about your mental health and well-being well-being. If you don't even know when your next meal is coming and you're incredibly dehydrated, then you're probably not going to sit down and start thinking about your anxiety or how you have like ADHD or something. It's not something that's top of mind because you have a lot of other things to worry about. So obviously these people are not going to struggle with the variety of mental health disorders that we have in Western countries today because their main priority is putting food on the table for their tribe.
In a lot of other countries, we're still eating organs. We've recently abandoned the ways of our ancestors in favor of muscle meat that falls off the bone.
Ah, yes. The whole we've abandoned the ways of our ancestors, we're not eating like our ancestors anymore, that whole argument. I'm here to tell you that no, we have not abandoned the ways of our ancestors because there's no real way to do that because our ancestors ate a variety of foods. There are hunter-gatherer tribes that are primarily vegetarian or plant-based. There have been human species that have been basically vegetarian or vegan. There's also hunter-gatherer tribes that exclusively eat meat or exclusively eat seafood. It just depends on the environment that you live in and the resources that you have available to you at the time. It has nothing to do with eating raw meat because it's good for you. It has everything to do with eating what food you can't eat because you need to survive to see the next day. In fact, we come from a mostly vegetarian lineage. If you think about it, chimpanzees, orangutans, and gorillas primarily eat plants and vegetables. They very rarely actually eat meat. And we didn't actually see this sustained increase in meat eating until Homo erectus around 2 million years ago. For example, the Hadza, a tribe that the Liver King frequently cites but knows relatively little about, actually ranks honey as their favorite food. And when times are scarce, they'll dig for and roast tubers. They also have a lot of berries, baobab fruit, nuts. Their diet is actually mostly plant-based. The Yanomamo actually eat a lot of shrimp and other crustaceans. And in the Kung tribe, plant food makes up 67% of their energy intake, while meat-based food makes up only 33%. And 50% of that plant-based energy comes from one nut, the mungungo nut. Many Australian Aboriginals rely on seeds from millet plants. Many hunter-gatherer tribes in Papua New Guinea rely on starch from wild sago palms. There's no one-size paleo diet that fits us all. Humans have been eating a variety of foods for millions of years since the beginning of our evolution. Studies have shown that early hominins were not like these big game hunters. They were mostly just scavengers. Animal food is hard to procure, whereas plant food is reliable, it comes in predictable seasons, and it's available to easily consume.
I still like to eat foods that are delicious, but I'm always going to eat the foods that are the most nutritious, that's going to allow me to feel and function and be my best for most of the life that I'm living.
Got it.
So I'm okay. So I eat raw liver and raw bone marrow and raw testicle every single day.
Alright, so let's talk about the nutrition of raw liver. While liver can be very nutritious in a lot of vitamins and minerals, like vitamin A, B, C, minerals like phosphorus, iron, potassium, folate, and niacin, it's very nutrient dense. It helps get in iron and it lowers your chance of anemia. It also improves your bone health. But liver is also very fatty and it has high cholesterol. And too much cholesterol can increase your risk of heart disease, especially for people that already have a risk of heart disease. Too much vitamin A can also lead to vitamin A toxicity. And liver also has a lot of copper in it, and a lot of copper can also lead to copper toxicity, which can lead to kidney and heart failure, and liver disease and brain damage. I do want to point out that Liver King does get one thing right. Eating liver does not mean that you're going to get toxins from that liver. The liver's duty is to detoxify the food that you're consuming, but the liver doesn't actually store the toxins that it's filtering out. Those are sent away and are excreted in the form of feces. So when you eat liver, you don't actually have to worry about being poisoned from the toxins of whatever food that animal consumed. Eating a lot of organ meats in high frequency can also lead to gout because of the high fats and cholesterol.
People don't want to do that because they don't want to taste it. They don't want to. They don't want to procure it. They don't want to taste it. They don't want to put it down their mouth. So if you're not going to do that, that's where a supplement comes in. We've recently, over the last 100 or 200 years, we took this nutrition out of our diet to our detriment. And now we're suffering with deficiencies that are immeasurable.
Once again, Liver King, we did not take out meat to our detriment. Like I mentioned before, where I referenced several hunter-gatherer tribes that eat a variety of different things. Humans eat a variety of food. So saying that we took meat out to our detriment is just incorrect because you have no evidence to back that claim. There is no one paleo diet because we all eat different things. And that's totally fine because it's important to get your nutrients and vitamins from a variety of foods. And the fact that we're suffering from these mental health diseases or obesity now, I mean, where's the correlation or a relationship between taking raw liver out of our diet and the increase of obesity and mental health issues. He doesn't actually cite any studies for this, just kind of vaguely hand waves about how our reduction in the consumption of meat is leading towards mental health issues and widespread obesity, both of which are incredibly complex issues that stem from a variety of factors. So summing that all up to say that it's due to the fact that we're not eating enough raw New Zealand, Australian grass-fed liver seems pretty unbelievable to me.
You got me.
I'm just
guilty. But here's the thing: our early ancestors, they dried this. They made pemmican.
Right.
They stored it, right?
Okay, yeah.
And so this is very evolutionarily consistent.
Right.
This is ancestral.
All right, so let's get into his supplement pills, shall we? Pemmican was actually made by native North Americans thousands of years ago, and it's made by drying meat and fat, and sometimes berries were added to kind of flavor up the pemmican. Now, naturally in that state is pretty healthy for you to consume, and it lasts a long time, and it's a good source of energy. Ethan brings up a good point in this section by asking Liver King how his manufactured supplement pills are different from genetically modified foods. And I agree. How is genetically modifying food in a lab just a continuation of something that we've been doing for thousands of years anyway, since the advent of agriculture, different from you harvesting the livers of cows in farms and pastures and manufacturing these pills in a factory, mass producing them and shipping them out to hundreds of thousands of people? Any different? I'll wait. Because apparently GMOs are subprimal, but manufactured and processed dried liver in a gelatin capsule is primal in something that's evolutionarily consistent. Seems to line up and make a lot of sense. Now, I've actually looked at the website where Liver King is selling these so-called supplements, and I just want to state that nowhere on this website does he actually list the full ingredient list. He lists the vitamins and minerals that you're going to get and the actual amount of dried liver that's going to be in there, but in terms of other ingredients, all he lists are gelatin capsules. Personally, I don't find that satisfactory because I actually interned at a pharmaceutical company, and regardless of how natural and unprocessed the pills were, there always needed to be some kind of lubrication or binding factors when making these pills so that they absorbed into the stomach easily and were broken down by your stomach acid easily when you swallowed them. So him saying that there's no other ingredients but a gelatin capsule and dried liver is pretty hard for me to believe, because I saw with my own eyes that different additives and lubricants needed to be added to be swallowed and taken by people that needed them. And once again, none of any of their health statements that they proclaim on their website about their supplements have actually been evaluated by the FDA. Honestly, it's giving pink sauce all over again.
That any primitive culture in the world, they do all these things. They get the sun. They don't slather their skin in sunblock and wear clothes all the time.
So, Liver King is right about one thing. Hunter-gatherers don't wear sunscreen. But that does not mean that you should not wear sunscreen. For the love of God, please wear sunscreen. Skin cancer is the most common form of cancer in the United States. 1 in 5 Americans will develop skin cancer in their lifetime, and more than 1 million Americans today are living with skin cancer. Melanoma rates have been steadily rising since the 80s and 90s, and I just want to enunciate the fact that skin cancer can affect anyone regardless of their skin color. Just because you're more melanated than other people does not mean that you're not going to get skin cancer. In fact, skin cancer is actually diagnosed later in patients with dark skin tones, making it harder to treat later on. 21% of melanoma cases in African American patients are diagnosed when the cancer has spread to nearby lymph nodes. So please, for the love of God, wear some sunscreen.
No
They don't have
way,
gout.
dude. Do they farm?
What'd you say?
I said no way.
I'm there.
They don't farm at all.
No,
They don't-
you.
they
I
don't
know
have
you are, but
they don't
like
they don't gather
they
at all.
farm. They farm. That's how we. That's
Modern
how
day
we.
primitive
You know
culture tribes?
You know how we came out of the cave? Agriculture.
Well, how recent is, when did we start farming?
Oh, I don't know. A
so
couple
we got-
thousand years.
so we got-
Several thousand years.
So we got 3 million years.
10,000 years, maybe.
We got 3 million years of our evolutionary history. Mm-hmm. In the smallest fraction of our time, we started doing that.
Yeah, but that's when everything happened. That
What's
was
your
like a
point?
big
All
breakthrough
all
for
I'm
us.
saying is the smallest fraction of our time we started doing that.
Right.
What my thesis is,
Yeah, primitive
is that's to our
accumulation.
detriment.
So here I actually want to correct something that Ethan was saying. So Liver King is actually correct. There are modern hunter-gatherer tribes today that don't farm. There are some tribes that kind of mix in some agriculture or pastoralism while also hunting and gathering, but there are also tribes that primarily hunt and gather and do not farm. Now Liver King says that agriculture has been our detriment and our downfall. And this is a very common complex argument that anthropologists have been going back and forth for decades now. Some anthropologists say that agriculture was our downfall, while others say that it was the reason why we were able to get to where we are today. Now, there is some evidence that agriculture has negatively affected aspects of our life, like our dental health. Living in close communities with other people led to infectious disease outbreaks that were disastrous to many civilizations. But the advent of agriculture also comes with many benefits. For example, it allowed for humans to actually settle down in settlements instead of constantly moving from place to place. This way, civilizations or tribes could get bigger over time because we were all in one settlement. And the mass production of crops or food meant that we no longer had to worry about where our next meal was coming from, and we didn't have to spend hours every single day foraging for our next meals. This meant that we could focus on a lot of other things like technology or urban planning systems or sewage or architecture or craftsmanship that we just didn't have time to do before. This also meant that we could spend more time childbearing and producing more kids. We had an increased social life because we were living near all these other humans, which led to the development of more complex language as well as written language. We developed mathematics to keep track of our crops and grain stores. We were able to develop irrigation and plumbing. So saying that agriculture was the detriment and downfall of our society when there's still many hunter-gatherer tribes today that actually still practice forms of agriculture is an overgeneralization of this ongoing debate within anthropologists. You can't deny the massive benefits that having a food surplus had on our species in general and how immensely it has helped us become what we are today. And also in terms of diseases, yes, living in a permanent settlement where you're surrounded by a lot of other humans that are living close to you does lead to infectious disease outbreaks, but let's not pretend that hunter-gatherers don't also suffer from diseases. Hunter-gatherers suffer from a lot of pathogens and parasite-induced illnesses and live half as long as us and also work twice as hard as us. So you tell me what society you'd rather live in.
The Maasai, they eat three things. It's milk, blood, and meat. They're pastoralists, and that's all they eat: milk, blood, and meat.
How many members of the tribe? Curious.
And the band that we actually were with 2 or 3 different bands of the Maasai. I would say there's about 20 or 30.
Okay, small little tribes.
Small, efficient. They knew exactly what their role was.
Interesting.
But you look at how they're eating and how they're kicking ass in life, how happy they are, how beautiful they are, their dispositions. Trust me when I tell you, you want some of what they have.
I know, but they've never watched anime.
Now, what he conveniently forgets to mention, and what actually a lot of H3 podcast fans brought up after this episode, is that they also have one of the lowest life expectancies at only 45 years, which honestly, compared to other modern hunter-gatherer tribes, isn't even that bad. He says that they're the happiest people they've ever met. Honestly, I'm sure that they're lovely people. Once again, there's no conclusive research on the mental health or well-being of a lot of these tribes. And actually, only the Maasai warriors eat the exclusive diet of milk, meat, and blood. Maasai women and most others in the Maasai tribe eat a lot of vegetables and supplement their diet with a lot of plant-based food. Now, there is some research to point towards the fact that Maasai men are pretty healthy and strong, but actually the Maasai women suffer from a lot of problems. Specifically, they suffer from fertility and pregnancy problems. So much so that a lot of the Maasai men in the tribe actually search for women in other tribes to mate with. And no surprise, diarrhea and intestinal issues are a huge problem amongst the Maasai tribe. Also, Liver King mentions that the Maasai tribe are pastoralists. So how does that fit his narrative that agriculture and domestication of animals is our detriment when they quite literally participate in domestication of animals and they also occasionally farm as well? I mean, I failed geometry in high school, but that math is still not adding up.
I started reading as many books as I could, and then finally I came upon a book. Sally Fallon wrote this book, Nourishing Traditions, and it was all about the ancestral way of living, and it made sense to me. It made sense to me that the way that we've lived for millions of years to heal and be healthy is what we still expect today in the modern world to heal and be healthy. And I said, holy shit.
Now, I just want to make a brief comment about the book that he brings up called Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon. I'm not going to make any personal opinions or reviews of the book because I obviously have not read the book. I just want to provide some context. So, for some context, Sally Fallon has a master's and a bachelor's degree in English, and she wrote this book in coordination with a nutritionist and researcher. Now, I've looked through some of the chapters of this book and they sound fine. Once again, I'm not a nutritionist, but I don't know how seriously I would take the advice of someone who writes a book on nutrition, but whose only degrees are in English.
Start a company that sells these 9 ancestral tenets. And you come to my company with high blood pressure, how much you want to bet? My product expert is going to tell you what you need to do is take off your shirt, get some midday sun, take off your shoes, connect with the earth. These are evidence-based ways to lower your blood pressure. And they're thinking, the customer's thinking, what are you going to sell me on? What am I going to buy? If you unequivocally take care of people and they see the benefit from it, they're a customer for life.
Now listen, there is evidence to suggest that going outside, connecting with nature, being in the sun is all really good and beneficial for your health. What I am going to say, if you have cancer or a very serious medical condition, please don't go to Liver King for medical advice. Please consult your local doctor or hospital for what steps you should take next. Because I don't think taking your shirt off and getting some sun and walking barefoot on the ground is going to prevent you from getting skin cancer. If anything, if you're not wearing sunscreen and you're doing that, you're probably increasing your likelihood of being diagnosed with melanoma soon.
Hard part of starting a business, right?
I think you went viral first, and then you started.
Oh, no. Yeah, you're completely incorrect about that.
You were way
I just went
before.
viral. We started
Yeah.
this in 2016. So in 2016, we started this. By 2017, we did 7 million just with one company.
How? How do you find the
No,
people?
how did people find
Yeah.
out about Liver King or the
I'm
liver
telling
subs?
you.
How'd they find him?
I'm telling you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I made a website. It was called ancestralsupplements.com. I did it myself, ground up. I did it like in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And then it resonated. People would start searching articles. How do I fix my high blood pressure? They read the article. Oh, you take off your shoes, you get sun.
So were you guys doing like SEO, PPC? Were you buying ads?
Yeah,
stuff
people
like
talk
that?
about all this fancy shit. At the end of the day, when you provide real empirical value, people pay for that shit.
Okay, so Liver King claims that he made $7 million in 1 year with his one company when he had little to no exposure. Listen, I have my degrees in anthropology and evolutionary biology, not finance and economics, so who am I to even say anything? But as a type A skeptic, I have a very, very hard time believing that with no exposure and no search engine optimization tactics, this man was able to make $7 million off of one company from 1 year from his clients. Like Ethan and Hassan point out, I have no idea where he's getting his clients from. I can only assume that it's from unscrupulous sources. All I'm saying is that something smells fishy and it's not his body order for once.
Let me ask you this. I understand that you don't wipe your asshole. Is that true?
Most of the time, that's true.
Yeah. So I find that really interesting. Your shits are just really like clean,
They're clean. They're crispy.
crispy.
Listen.
Deep- Lightly fried.
Are you supplementing with fiber though? You're not just eating meat.
No, I
right?
don't supplement with fiber.
No,
man.
this man,
This-
he's Liver King.
The way that I just don't believe what he's saying at all. You cannot eat the amount of meat that Liver King is eating and not have poop that is just diarrhea all the time. Lads and ladies, please eat your vegetables, get your fiber in. Trust me, it will make your poops way better. And you're not going to be in pain whenever you go to the bathroom all the time. I highly doubt his poop is as clean and crispy as he says it is, but also I don't really want to see a picture of it ever. So take that for what you will.
If all guys are manicured like that and you show up and you're not fucking manicured, guess what? This guy's different.
I don't know if that's a good
This guy's
thing,
a
actually.
man. This guy smells different. This guy is fucking built different. This guy's different. This guy's the most primal guy I've ever been with.
Listen guys, if you don't want to shower, you want to brush your teeth, you don't want to wipe your booty hole, like, that's totally fine. But good luck getting other women interested in you. All I can say is kudos to Liver Queen for putting up with that, because I don't think it's something that many other women would be okay with. But hey, whatever makes you feel primal, right? Even if it means having little to no hygiene and having BO everywhere you go.
Do you use toothpaste?
No. Our early ancestors didn't brush, didn't floss,
brush?
didn't get cavities.
Do you brush?
I don't use toothpaste. I don't brush. I don't floss.
You don't even deal with the mouth.
And I don't get cavities.
Okay, interesting.
Great, so another thing that Liver King doesn't do. Now I'm going to dive into this statement a little bit, but there is a lot of information on this that I probably will cover in another video in more detail. Now, Liver King does have a point that the advent of agriculture did lead to the spike of cavities and other dental issues. One study found that the frequency of cavities in hunter-gatherer groups was lower than the frequency of cavities in agricultural groups. Streptococcus micans, the cavity-causing bacteria, became common sometime around 3,000 to 14,000 years ago, which is around the time when humans started farming. Studies done on the face skeleton of ancient Egyptians showed that as their reliance on agriculture increased, the reduction on chewing stresses placed on their jaws could have led to smaller faces and more dental issues. And another study showed that younger individuals who had a generally softer diet suffered from more malocclusion than older individuals that had grown up on a harder or tougher diet. So there is some evidence to suggest that our reliance on in a more starchy, carb-based diet that requires less chewing kind of led to more dental issues and a higher incidence of cavities, more incidences of malocclusion, and generally slimmer and smaller faces that could lead to overcrowding. Whereas hunter-gatherers, because they have generally tougher diets, they kind of wear down their teeth more and don't necessarily have those issues. But that also doesn't mean that hunter-gatherers didn't suffer from dental issues, because they definitely did. Cavities do occur with some frequency in hunter-gatherer groups, and they also occur with some frequency from fossil hominins in the past, as well as chimpanzees and orangutans. In fact, one human skull from 125,000 to around 300,000 years ago actually has cavities in 10 of its 11 remaining teeth. Another study looking at ancient North Africans showed that 51% of the teeth of 52 adults had cavities. These individuals relied on a lot of starchy nuts that could have led to these cavities. Now, obviously, diets high in processed sugary foods that are very starchy and carby do lead to the higher incidence of cavities, but a lot of hominins that were mainly hunter-gatherers also lost teeth due to tooth wear. Hunter-gatherers certainly did not have it easy. They had heavy tooth wear that led to the loss of several of their teeth, toothaches, and infections from parasites. So yes, there is a relationship between the advent of agriculture and higher incidences of malocclusion and other dental issues, but this by no means means that hunter-gatherers did not also suffer from dental issues. Either way, in each scenario, take care of your teeth, people. Oral hygiene is incredibly important, so make sure to brush your teeth twice a day and floss regularly. And actually, speaking of flossing, when Liver King says that our ancestors didn't practice any dental or oral hygiene or didn't take care of their teeth or brush their teeth, he's just blatantly wrong once again. In fact, toothpick use may have actually occurred up to 2 million years ago, making it the earliest known dental manipulation. Scientists actually identified 2 African hominins with clear horizontal grooves on their teeth. These teeth, that belong to Homo habilis and Homo erectus respectively, show evidence of toothpick use because of these grooves that they have in their teeth from using pieces of grass or pieces of bone to kind of pick at their teeth. And these are some of the earliest members of our genus. So if we were practicing oral hygiene 2 million years ago, I don't see why Liver King could just never pick up a toothbrush and toothpaste and brush his damn teeth.
Okay, sparkling water.
Plastic is subprimal,
What about in glass?
primal.
I don't have anything scientific to say to this statement. I just think it's hilarious that plastic is subprimal and glass, for whatever reason, is primal. I think that Liver King is living in a very strange world surrounded by logical fallacies and hypocrisy.
You know, one of the guys had acne all over the face, right? And I'm like, hey, you know, people are going to make fun of you for being a pizza face, right? And he goes, oh, I don't.
You said that to him?
He goes,
That was unnecessary.
Yeah, nothing scientific with this one. Listen, if an elderly man came up to me and called me a pizza face for having acne all over my face during a very vulnerable time of my life, probably would have broken down crying. And along those lines, Liver King also mentioned in the podcast that he didn't feed his kids for 3 days and then decided to present them with a bunch of meat. This sounds like abuse. I don't want to make any exaggerated statements, but starving your kids for 3 days and then rewarding them with raw liver and testicles, let's just say that I don't think it's what kids dream of when they finally get to eat. All in all, I don't think Liver King really has any idea what he's talking about. There are aspects of what he's saying that make sense. I mean, these are very basic tenets of life, you know, like go out, get some sun, touch some grass. Obviously, those are going to help you out with, you know, mental health or feeling down some days or not feeling your best. But in terms of taking liver supplements and going to this dude for medical advice, listen, I know health insurance in America is a nightmare, but if you can just crawl your way into a medical doctor, I think that will be miles better than any kind of advice this guy is giving you. Anthropologically, a lot of his claims just are rooted in misconception, and they have very little research to support them. He says that he's lived with hunter-gatherer tribes and he's read a lot of books. That's great, but every hunter-gatherer tribe is different. Like I mentioned before, they eat a variety of different diets and do a variety of different activities, and some of them are pastoralists and they farm as well as being hunter-gatherer tribes. So there's no one size fits all to our diet and to our movement patterns. So saying that there's one paleo diet and we need to incorporate raw liver is just a huge overgeneralization. So for anyone watching this, please wear your sunscreen, please get enough fiber in your diet and have vegetables and hearty, healthy foods. Get some sun, touch some grass occasionally while wearing sunscreen, of course. And obviously getting enough sleep is important. That's a no-brainer. I think Liver King has some good points, but they get very skewed up in his view of raw liver is best and the whole we've walked away from the path of our ancestors argument. As long as you're healthy and active and eating a good balanced diet, I don't think you need to take raw liver supplements. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like, and if you're interested in more of my content, please subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And for more updates on the videos that I'm making next, please make sure to follow my Instagram. Now, Harambe and I are going to go foraging for some nuts and berries. Because you know what? I think it's time I take some of Liver King's advice. Except for the raw liver and testicles. Because frankly, that sounds incredibly unappetizing. But I'll see you guys in my next video soon. Bye!